Will Goldstein here, thekingscourt.com. I decided to go to hatless today. Anyway, so I'm doing my second video having to do with the book Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. And again, I can't really read from it, but I can certainly just kind of browse through it and give you some highlights from it. You can always welcome to read this wonderful book by yourself. It's it's very insightful, and I found a lot of interesting ways, and I think it's particularly a good book for people who are seekers of the truth. So this particular video is, I'm going to call it the same as he calls it in the book, The Law of Human Nature. And so again, I'm just kind of browsing through. I don't take notes, so I sort of take notes in the book, but I'm just kind of looking at it. So if I'm looking for a while, I'm trying to figure out what to say, because I didn't really prepare it other than to hold this book in my hand. I don't have time to do more than that because I'm a musician. Okay, so what he's starting out by saying in this particular chapter, and these again were talks when he first gave them, C.S. Lewis, he's appealing that there is some kind of standard human behavior which that we somehow know about. And so you can ask the question, well, how do we know about this? And what he's really talking about is the idea of a rule of law or fair play or decent behavior that we have in mind morally. And he's suggesting that all people have that. For example, everyone agrees that no matter what culture you're in or any time, for the most part, people, not everyone, but for the most part, people agree it's in the Ten Commandments sort of ideas of, it's not just okay to just kill anybody or steal anything that you want. I suppose there are exceptions to that. For example, gypsies are proud of stealing. But, for the most part, in cultures, for the most part, people have an idea about they agree on what is right and wrong. And obviously a good place to go for that, if you're looking into that, is the Ten Commandments, for example, which I'm not going to really get into at this point. But, so it's just standard rules for fair play. And it used to be called the law of nature. And the idea is that everybody is governed by this law, just in the same way that, say, we have gravitation or the laws of nature and biological laws. Well, human beings, and he specifies human beings, man, is different in that he has an opportunity or a freedom in his making to be able to choose to obey or to disobey. And he used that in juxtaposition to other animals. For example, sure, we train our dogs or whatever to do what we want, but I don't think most people would not hold their dog accountable or their cat accountable for doing other than what you want them to do. So in other words, they're just they don't have any moral sense of what's right and wrong. If they're hungry, they're just going to go eat something. For example, my dog Champ used to go and wander, around dog years ago, and he found some chickens, and he just simply came, ate the chickens, and he somehow got in to eat the chickens. Now, the people that own the chickens were certainly not very happy with that. But, dogs are dogs, but human beings have an opportunity or, I guess a responsibility from God to make choices and hopefully to obey and make good choices, the right choices. And he's stressing that this is peculiar to human nature and not, like I just said, to animals or vegetables or anything like that. But the point that he's really making out of this is that we don't need to be taught it so much. He's saying that it's instinctively built into humanity. I think Kant talks about that, a moral stamp that's just inbred into us just from being a human being. We have that innate ability to, for the most part, to understand what is right and wrong. So when people act wickedly, I would say that there's still something in them, deep down in there, that they know that it's wrong and wicked, but they just simply choose to do it for whatever reason. So then, and we do, the idea is that there's decent behavior and as a whole, and it's obvious to everyone. So, and he brings up an illustration. What's the use of saying that someone is wrong, or let's say there's an enemy, and they're doing something wrong? What's the sense of saying if there's something wrong that they're doing if you don't have the idea that there really is something that's right that they should have done instead? And he's saying that different civilizations in different ages have all had, to some degree, some different sense of moralities. But he also believes, C.S. Lewis, that if you take the time to really study these religions, you will find that and he talks about the ancient Egyptians, the Babylonians, the Chinese, and the Hindus, and the Romans, and the Greeks, people like that. And they're all very similar. So the idea is that this must have been instinctive within them to know what this right was, because otherwise how would these different cultures from different times come up with the same ideas about what is right and wrong in their culture? I mean, I guess some illustrations, like everyone can pretty much agree that it's not best to always put yourself first, okay, egocentric, or narcissist or somebody like that, or selfishness. Who admires someone who's selfish? He makes that point. So then he goes on to say, sometimes you find people that don't believe that there is really a right and a wrong. But then if you go out and check out this same person who doesn't believe there's any right or wrong, you'll find that the same man, later he may break his promise to you and not think much of it. But if you try breaking your promise to him, he's the first one to complain and tell you how it's not fair. So, and then he makes he's kind of building up, and this is, I think, one of his main points in this chapter, is that now that we understand that this law of human nature exists, he's saying none of us are really keeping it. We know it is expected. We know that we should do it, but for some reason, well, maybe some of us are keeping it to some degree, for sure, but not completely, not to perfection, not in the sense that, say, we would say that Jesus kept it, or Jesus was sinless, for example, without spot or blemish. Okay, so we don't really perfectly keep this law, but we know we should. So, and he's saying, oh, well, I'm not really preaching to you, and he says that he doesn't pretend to be better than anyone else. That's some wisdom right there from the start. But somehow, even though we don't keep this law to perfection, the next interesting point that he makes is somehow we expect other people to keep that law. So we expect it from other people, but don't necessarily do it ourselves, though we know we should. And these are the main points that he's making there. And he says it's not a question of whether there's good excuses. Everybody has their excuses why they didn't do what they should do. Okay? So, the point is that they know that there is this law of human nature and decent behavior, and we know that when we don't do this behavior that we should do, that we're the first to make up all our list of excuses of why we didn't act decently. So the truth is that we believe that there is decency, and we have a trouble facing the fact that we are breaking this and that we're not being as decent as we should be. So we make up all these excuses and shifting responsibilities and blaming other people for the things that we know that we should do. And yeah, so this kind of bad behavior, and where people just find explanations to write off all of their bad behavior. Okay, they don't take responsibility for the fact. They just blame the other person. That's what, look at the world around you. That's basically what's happening everywhere. So again, he's just kind of giving a recapitulation, the two main points that he wants to make. And if you look over the face of the earth, everyone realizes they ought to behave in a certain way. And there's nothing that they can do to get rid of that idea. It's instinctive. It's built into them. Where did it come from? I would say God. I think obviously he would say the same thing, but he hasn't gotten there yet. And secondly, they do not behave, so they don't behave in the way that they know that they should. And he calls this the law of nature, and he believes that this is the foundation for anyone who wants to have clear thinking about himself and about the universe that we live in.